Good morning. All right, we are going to work on colors a little bit more this week. We're going to work specifically with complementary colors. These are the colors that sit across from each other on the color wheel. So if we look at this color wheel that I have here, I made this with kindergarten through second grade last week. Red and green are across from each other on the color wheel. They are complementary colors. Blue and orange are across from each other on the color wheel. They are complementary colors. Purple and yellow typically are across from each other, but I had 2 extra spaces here, so it's not completely accurate. Purple and yellow are across from each other on the color wheel. They are also complementary colors. I have 2 extra spaces. So this is indigo, blue violet. This is yellow green. These are tertiary colors. They are made by mixing a primary and a secondary color together. We are going to be focusing on the complementary colors. So the colors across from each other on the color wheel. Red and green, orange and blue, purple and yellow. When you get your paper, you do want to fold it in half. And you want to fold it in half again. We are doing this so that we create 4 different sections in our paper because I'm working with 3 different sets of complementary colors. I have 1 extra. So I'm going to start here in this top left corner, and we are going to use shapes to draw a lemon. We're not going to draw the whole lemon. We're going to actually draw a half of a lemon. So we're going to draw what we see when we cut a lemon open. I'm going to actually use crayons to draw. If you are not comfortable doing that, you may draw this out with a pencil, but you don't have to. I'm going to start with green, and I'm going to use a green crayon. So I'm going to be working with my green and red complementary colors right now. I'm going to draw my lemon with a green crayon. If you want to draw your lemon with a red crayon, you can do that as well. Lemon is kind of a round shape, but it's not a perfectly round shape. So we're not worried about making this a perfect circle. Lemons tend to be a little bit bumpy. So there's my lemon, and I'm giving it a little bit of a knob there because that is, after all, kind of its button. And I'm going to go back around, and I'm going to make that crayon line a little bit darker. I want it to be nice and heavy. All right, now within this lemon, in order to draw the different slices, the different sections, we're going to use triangles. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a little circle right here in the center, and that would be the spine of the lemon that all of the lovely juicy pieces of lemon come off of. And then from there, I'm going to draw different size triangles. Now, obviously, I'm not necessarily going to go up to a very strong point there. And it's okay to have spaces between them. They're not all going to be exactly side by side. As you know, when we open lemons, cut them open, even oranges, when we do that, sometimes we have funny little shaped pieces here when we are trying to cut orange slices and lemon slices. So these are not supposed to all be exactly the same size and shape. All right, so there is my lemon. I'm going to do another small one right here. So if you are not comfortable drawing with crayon, that is okay. Draw it with pencil first, then trace over it with the crayon. But we do want to go over it with the crayon. You don't want to see the pencil lines when you're done with this project. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use different shades of green to color in my green. And I have these 2 basic shades. To create multiple shades, one of the things that I can do is mix these 2 together as well. I could also use a yellow to mix into my green if I wanted to change it slightly, or even a little bit of blue, but I want my overall color to be green, and I'm going to sharpen these up just a little bit. And I'm using a regular pencil sharpener because it works really well to get my crayon sharpened for me. It's just a little bit. I didn't need a ton of sharpening on that. I might do a little bit more here. You can see what I'm doing here. I like using the pencil sharpeners to sharpen my crayons because it is, this is a little metal tooth, and crayon sharpeners, they're all plastic. So this tends to sharpen my crayon more so than the actual crayon sharpeners do. The ones that I have, that is. But the ones that I have are school safe. That's why I have them. So this one I don't use for sharpening pencils. I only use it for sharpening crayons because it has wax buildup on that metal, so it wouldn't really sharpen my pencils very well. I do need to shake off those little crayon pieces. Clean my, whoops, sorry about that. Knock the camera, clean my workspace off a little bit. So I can keep my art as neat as possible. All right, so those two are sharpened for me. So I'm gonna go ahead and color this sky in right here. And I'm just gonna play around with these colors. I'm gonna do this center area. I like, this is a really good space to kind of experiment with creating different shades of green. So you could actually even use a white crayon to make some of your green areas lighter or darker. Well, lighter with white. If you wanted to make your green darker, one way that you could make it darker is by adding a little bit of blue to it, or black. I tend to shy away from using black crayons just because sometimes we use a little more black than we need to, and it tends to ruin our color. And so while we're learning color, I usually don't use black because it takes a certain amount of finesse to just get it just right. So the white I used first, then I put that green over top of it, and I'm going back over it with white again, and that makes that a slightly lighter green. If I go over this green with white, it doesn't really change the color that much, as you can see there. I'm going to play with it right here on this one too. And now I'm going to actually throw this green on top of this yellow green, which I colored. I used a pretty good amount of pressure when I was coloring with that yellow green, so it may not, it's not going to mix too well, but that's okay. And then I'm going to go over it again with the yellow green. So real quick, when you are coloring with crayons, you can't actually erase a crayon if you make a mistake. What you can do is, if you see this spot right here, you can tell that it's got quite a bit of buildup on it. You can scratch it off so that you can get some of that buildup off like this with a thumbnail or with like a piece of plastic or something like that. But you're never going to be able to get that color off completely. Don't want to use erasers to try to erase the crayon because that's going to destroy your eraser. And you don't want to do that. You need that eraser to work. But you can scratch it off kind of like this if you get too much buildup on there, or if you want to try to layer another color on top of it. This will work. Just like that. So you see it kind of took that top layer of this darker green off, but I still have that yellow green on there, and I'm just going to go right over top of it like this. There we go. All right, and let's see. I'm going to just color in right here a little bit of white. I'm going to color this section in white here. And I'm going to do yellow-green on top of it just to see if it makes it even lighter, which it does make it a little bit lighter. A little bit. Not quite enough so that you can tell a huge difference, but it does make it a little bit lighter. And then I'm going to go back over it again, and that lightens it up just a little bit more. So that's fun. All right, and we will do, let's see, let's do this right here. And I'm going to do this very lightly because I don't want a ton of green. I do want this to end up being a lighter green because I'm going to do darker around the outside edges. And I'm going to do this yellow green here. Yeah, I like that better, much better. And this here. Then I'm gonna actually scrape that off a little bit because it's a little bit darker than I wanted it to be. But it's still leaving some of that on there. See that? Pretty cool, huh? And then I'm gonna very lightly go over it just to kind of smooth that out so you can't see any of the little scrapes from my nail. And it's still darker than here. So this is a little bit darker than I want it to be. So I'm gonna, all right, I'm gonna scrap a little bit of this, scratch a little bit of this off, not scrap. It's a little bit darker than I want for the little lemon pieces, the lemon wedges. So I'm scratching a little bit of that off. And scraping is what I was trying to say. And then I'm gonna go over it with this yellow green here again. All right, so then I'm gonna take this green and I'm gonna color in this space around. I only have those two, the yellow green and the grass green. I do have a blue green, but I really want this to just be green. So that's why I'm just sticking with these two colors, and I'm using the white, and I'm playing around with layering them up to create different shades and different values of green in this lemon, which kind of looks like a lime since I'm coloring it in green. So if you call it a lime, that's okay. I'm totally okay with that. Very similar in shape, and we would draw it pretty much the same way. The main thing that would change it would be the size, that how you draw it as far as size. Limes are a little bit smaller than lemons, as well as the color that you colored it in if you're trying to make it look realistic. But with this project, if you wanted to call this a lime instead of a lemon, you could totally do that. Now, because I scraped off parts of my lemon that I was coloring in, you can see I have a lot of little pieces of crayon. So I definitely want to try to keep this paper as clean as possible. One of the ways, and I just made it messier, one of the ways you can do that is you can use a dry paintbrush to brush those little flecks of crayon off. I don't want to get the colors mixed in with what I'm going to do on the background. So for my background for this square, for this space, because we're doing complementary colors, my background to my green will be red. So I'm going to grab this red crayon here, and I'm going to just draw lines. When I get to the lime, I'm going to stop and hop down. Same here. I'm going to hop down. So making stripes, which are going to actually turn into squares. There are two ways you can do this. This is the first way you can do this, and then you can just draw lines so you're making squares this way, or you could actually just draw individual squares, and I will show you that over here. So that is my background for this, and I'm going to do the same thing here that I did here. I'm going to play with my red. I do have a red orange that I may play with a little bit, and I'm going to use my white. But those are the three colors I'm going to stick with. I have a red violet too, but I think I'm just going to stick with these three colors for now, because the red orange looks a little bit more like red. So those are the three colors that I'll maintain working on this section. This section is going to be either purple and yellow or blue and orange. Same with down here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you, I'm going to just go through fast forward, drawing each one of these. You're going to do the same thing here and here that we're doing here, that I just walked you through. However, you're going to use the two different sets of complementary colors. You're going to use blue and orange, and you're going to use purple and yellow. In this fourth square, you have to pick one of the complementary color pairs to use, but you can use it in a different way. So if you decided here you wanted to do blue and green, green and red again, you could do it, but you would need to flip-flop it, and the lemon would need to be red, and the background would need to be green. Any complementary color pair you want to do in this fourth one, you can do, but you need to do it the opposite way you did the one before. So I'm gonna go ahead and just work through this on fast forward so you can see what I'm doing. I'll make a couple of notes on the video for you if there's something that I want you to take a special note of. When you are done, I am going to actually show you a fun little technique at the very end of the video. If you make it all the way through to the end, I will know based on the surprise Easter egg that is at the end of this video. Alright guys, so the Easter egg I was telling you about involves a black marker, a paintbrush, and a little bit of water. So what I'm going to do is pretty simple. I am just going to go in between these squares. As you can see, I did leave a little bit of a white line or white space between all of my squares, and I'm just going to go in with the marker and just draw a line around. If you notice, when I get here, I'm going around the outside of the lemon. I'm not actually drawing a line through the lemon. I'm staying around the outside edge of the lemon. So we have actually used water with markers already this year. So you probably have an idea of what I'm gonna do with the marker and the water. So once I get everything marked in with marker, I'm just gonna take my paintbrush and I'm just gonna run it right along this marker line. And what it's gonna do is it's gonna push that marker, which will end up turning into a watercolor paint, into all of the white spaces on my paper. So any space on my paper that doesn't have crayon in it, that paintbrush and that water will push that marker into. And that's going to give it a really neat finish, like a wash type finish. Kind of make it look a little bit antiqued, but also just define some of those edges a little bit more. And it'll give it a real unique, fun look that I think you guys will like a lot. So I'm going to show you the paintbrush, how I use the paintbrush real quick, and then I'm going to fast forward the rest of it. If you don't want to use a paintbrush, you'd rather use a Q-tip, or you don't have a paintbrush, use a Q-tip. The Q-tip is going to do the exact same thing. I wouldn't necessarily use a toothbrush on this. I would stick with either the Q-tip or the paintbrush. But you can see wherever I have wax built up pretty heavy, it's not going to go into those spaces. It's actually going to work around it, or just sit on top of it. But the other spaces, sorry, I got a little piece of something stuck in my throat. That's why I'm coughing. But all the other areas, it will push that marker right into those edges and those spaces. And when it dries, it looks really cool. I need to put marker right in that spot right there. You can write on the paper a little bit, but it will kind of dry out the marker tip. So before you start using the paintbrush, check to make sure you have marker in every space that you want marker in. I'm gonna go ahead and go back into fast forward mode so you can see me go through this quickly. But this is your Easter egg, and you see how it kind of gives it a fun little finished look, and gives it a really neat, creates a really neat effect. If you like the white lines in between and you don't want to fill them in with that black marker to create that look, you don't have to. You can leave it as is. You don't have to do this part. This is just an added bonus for you that will just take your painting up to a little bit more, just a different look, maybe a notch above where it was before and where you wanted it to end. All right. All right, so here on my lemons, I don't want that extra water sitting on it too much, so I'm just gonna grab a paper towel and just dab. I'm not wiping, I'm just dabbing that excess water right off of my lemons. Now, I went back in after doing the fast forward and traced those triangles that I used to create the different little lemon slices inside of the lemon that we drew, because I did want those to be a little bit more visible than they were, so that you could see the different shades of orange and green and yellow and red inside of them. However, because there's a lot of wax build up that I used when I was mixing my colors, the water just kind of sat on top of it, and I didn't want it to dry with a lot of bumps. So I grabbed that paper towel and I just dab it. I don't want to wipe it. I just wanted to dab it because I don't want to smear any of that crayon, because even though I have finished coloring it in, that waxy crayon can still be wiped off a little bit. And I wanted to avoid doing that. So I have a few little drops here that I'm gonna dab up right there. And that also just kind of pushes whatever water doesn't get picked up by the paper towel into the paper. So that just has a really neat look. It just kind of cleans it up, finishes it off, makes it look a little bit different, but really a lot of fun. And So that's your little extra art bonus, art egg, I guess you could say, for watching through to the end. You get your little bonus surprise there for your art project. Have fun with this. This is not a one-day project. It may take you more than one day to complete it. Please take your time. It's gonna look really good. The more time you put into it, the better it's gonna look. I do want you to have fun, but I also want you to take your time.